I'd like to call the Tuesday, May 7, 2024 Papillion City Council meeting to order. Ms. Brown, would you please take the roll?
Sunday. Here. Mumgard. Here. Gaines. Here. Glover. Here. Fanslaw. Here. Klug. Here. Stubbe. Here. Engberg.
Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And do we have an affidavit of publication on file?
We do.
The current copy of the Open Meetings Act is posted in the back of the council chambers. Got two presentations tonight. First is a proclamation. I'd like to invite Tony Gowan, Parks Director, up. We have Kids to Parks Day. Tony. Go ahead and read it. Whereas May 18, 2024 is the 14th annual Kids to Parks Day, organized and launched by the National Park Trust, held annually on the third Saturday of May. Whereas Kids to Parks Day empowers kids and encourages families to get outdoors and visit local parks, public lands, and waters. Whereas the City of Papillion is dedicated to promoting an active lifestyle among children to combat the challenges of childhood obesity, diabetes, hypertension, and some other big word. Tony doesn't know it either, some medical term. Whereas Kids to Parks Day broadens children's appreciation for nature and outdoors, and whereas the City of Papillion recognizes the importance of recreating responsibly while enjoying the benefits of the outdoors and learning conservation. Whereas it is vital to introduce a new generation to the enjoyment of our 19 parks and 5 recreation areas, which attract over 400,000 visitors a year. Whereas the parks of the City of Papillion welcome children and adults alike, fostering inclusivity among participants. Now therefore, I, David Black, Mayor of the City of Papillion, do hereby proclaim May 18, 2024 as Kids to Park Day, and I encourage all residents of the City of Papillion to make time on the May 18th to take the children in their lives to a park. Tony, you want to share anything?
Sure, Mayor.
Thanks.
Just wanted to let everybody know that we have several projects finishing up this spring. The Schwer Park playground should be done in another couple of weeks, right ahead of time of the splash pads opening, of course, on the Memorial Day weekend. We did fire up all the splash pads the past week just to make sure they're running, and they are. They won't officially open until that Memorial Day weekend. But I actually looked at the soccer schedule today. Every soccer field in the city is being used this weekend. It's like 18 to 20 fields being used. So it's a busy time for us. But it's a great way to get the kids outside, and we like having them out there. So thank you, Mayor.
Then we got a special one tonight. We got a promotion within the police department. I'd like to invite Chief Whitted and Sergeant Frank Matea up for the oath of office. Chief, want to share a little bit?
I will. Thank you, Mayor. City Administrator Powers, Deputy City Administrator Mark Stearnsma, City Council, and citizens, police department. It's a pleasure to be before you today to do this promotion. These don't come around often, so when they do, they're special. This was an extremely long and competitive sergeant promotional process, but today we are pleased to announce the promotion of Officer Frank Matea to the rank of sergeant. Sergeant Matea started his career with the City of Papillion in August 2008 when he began working for the city's water department before joining the Papillion Police Department on October 14th, 2013. Frank holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Criminal Justice Administration from Peru State College, where he graduated summa cum laude. During his career, he has worked as a road patrol officer, field training officer, and currently as a school resource officer at the Liberty Middle School. Frank has an extensive training background and holds instructor certifications in defensive tactics, Axon Taser, Reflex Protect chemical spray, Bowler Wrap 100 and the 150, and Active Killer HTCQB, which is high intensity close quarters combat, where he serves as the lead instructor. Additionally, and of his own volition, Frank completed the APCO Institute CALIA Accreditation Management course and the 2-week Northwestern University Center for Public Safety Supervising Police Personnel course. Funny story about what led him to taking the CALIA accreditation course. Initially, Frank was not a big fan of CALIA, didn't really understand it, and didn't really know its benefits. It was after a long conversation with Sergeant Mattern that he began to better understand the merits of holding a CALIA accreditation endorsement, and subsequently went out and became a staunch proponent of CALIA, assisting our CALIA staff by providing numerous proofs from the patrol division that could be used to prove compliance with various CALIA standards. Other police-related leadership training Frank has completed includes First Line Supervisor IA Operations course, Applied Leadership Principles course, and First Line Supervision course. Frank also has experience in many peripheral duties, including serving as a member of the Metro Honor Guard, Rapid Deployment Force Unit, the Threat Assessment Team, and the Sarpy County Crash Team, where he holds certifications in intermediate and advanced accident investigation. Additionally, he regularly assists in the administration and management of the many Nebraska Highway Safety Traffic Grants that the department participates in, as well as currently serving as the coordinator of our bike patrol program. Lastly, Frank has earned several accommodations and awards while employed with the department, to include 2 life-saving awards and most recently the 2021 FOP Lodge 19 Officer of the Year Award. It is my pleasure to introduce Frank Mattia for promotion to the rank of sergeant with the Papillion Police Department. I'm gonna let Frank.
Gonna do the oath of office? You've done it before and it's long. Raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, Frank Mattia,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Nebraska
and the Constitution of the State of Nebraska
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith
that I will bear true faith
and allegiance to the same,
and allegiance to the same,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
and without mental reservation
without mental reservation
or for purpose of evasion,
or for purpose of evasion,
and that I will faithfully and impartially
that I will faithfully and impartially
perform the duties of police sergeant
perform the duties of police sergeant
according to law and to the best of my ability.
according to law and to the best of my ability.
And I do further swear
I do further swear
that I do not advocate,
that I do not advocate,
nor am I a member of,
nor am I a member of,
any political party or organization
any political party or organization
that advocates the overthrow
that advocates the overthrow
of the government of the United States
of the government of the United States
or of this state
or of this state
by force or violence,
force or violence,
and that during such time
and that during such time
as I am in this position,
I'm in this position,
I will not advocate nor become a member of
nor become a member of
any political party or organization
political party or organization
that advocates the overthrow
that advocates the overthrow
of the government of the United States
of the government of the United States
or of this state
or of this state
by force or violence.
force or violence.
So help me God. Congratulations.
So here's my wife Janelle, son Charlie, Buster, my mother Ava Mattia, my in-laws Jay and Joyce, and then in the back, brothers and sisters. I took the oath 10 years ago. I was honored to serve the city, and standing here today, I feel even more honored. I just wear this uniform, and anyone back there could wear this, be in the same position as me, and I hope to continue to, continue to wear this uniform with pride, so, thank you.
Ms. Powers, Administrator's report, please.
Thank you. And also, I want to say congratulations, Sergeant Mattea, as well. Well deserved. So great job. And I will make this quick since we have a long agenda tonight. Just a quick thank you to the Papillion and La Vista Public Works Departments for another successful cleanup days. Thank you to everyone involved. Huge effort. And then the 2024 Sarpy County Senior Olympics will be held tomorrow, May 8th, at the Papillion Landing. So stop by anytime tomorrow morning to check out the fun. It starts at 9 a.m. So if you just want to pop down there and check it out. The Papillion Half Marathon, 10K, and 5K Fun Run are scheduled for May 19th at the landing. And they are still looking for volunteers. So if anybody is interested in doing a watering station or anything, let Tracy or myself know. We'd love to have you guys they're hoping. And then just really quick on a United Cities update, Mayor Black and I are continuing to attend United Cities meetings, even though the current legislative session is out. It does look like there will be a special session this summer to talk about the property tax issues and potential legislation for that. So United Cities is going to continue to be involved in those discussions. And then along those lines, city staff is starting our work on the fiscal year 24-25 budget, knowing that there may potentially be some changes to our forms and how we do those for this next year, depending on what happens with the legislature. But with that in mind, we are going to continue, because the current state statutes and those timelines, we will continue with our current process of scheduling in July the meetings, the 3-on-1 meetings with Mayor Black, Mark, and myself to go over the budget. So we'll continue the process as normal, knowing that there may be a quick pivot that we might have to make depending on legislation. So that's all I have.
Thank you very much. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Councilman Glover. Second by Councilman Sunday. Mr. Stubbe, you wanted C4 pulled?
That is correct, Mayor.
Okay. Any others? Any proponents or opponents on the consent agenda? Any council discussion? Mr. Stubbe, did you have anything else other than C4?
Just C4.
Okay. Please vote on everything but C4.
Eight yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Next is item C4, Resolution R240042. A resolution to approve a master agreement for communication cable and facilities and public right-of-way with Ubiquity Nebraska LLC. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R240042?
Motion.
Motion by Councilman Stubbe. Second by Councilman Klug. Do we have any proponents or opponents? Council discussion. Mr. Stubbe.
Yeah, so we've had some issues with ALLO relative to the same type of service within the city of Papillion. I guess I would just ask staff with regard to this particular contract with Ubiquity, and I'm not picking on Ubiquity, but I'm just wanting to make sure that there's enough teeth within the master agreements or subsequent agreements that we might have with these companies to make sure that it puts us in a position, the city in a position, to address concerns that might be expressed by citizens out there or even city staff that are out there in the field. And so if just have a little discussion about that.
Mr. Kleffner, do you want to address that? Thank you.
Yes, with the issues we have had, it's been a little bit of a learning curve with some of the fiber companies coming in, but yes, the teeth is in the agreements to be able to address the issues we have. Sometimes it is a learning curve on our end also, but we're resolving those issues.
Anything else? Any other discussion? Please vote on item C4.
Mayor, for a second.
Sorry, yes, Mr. Mumgard.
I'm just going to join with Councilmember Sunday and express a complaint. As I understand, we've seen a great, I'm sorry, Councilmember Stubbe. It's tough, man, some days. Bob, you did a good job. Okay, I agree with you. You know, we've seen a lot of construction in fiber along the right-of-way. I think this is a result of legislation that was passed 3, 4, 5 years ago by the legislature over our objection, which tilted the power, or the complaining part, to the cable companies, and basically told us, we weren't smart enough to know whether cable companies could do a good job laying in the right-of-way or not, and basically said, we're out of the picture. So Bob, I agree with you. Yes, I want this to have all the strength it can have, but I also want to point out that we're in this position because of the wisdom of the Nebraska legislature several years ago who told us we were stupid. Thank you.
Any other council discussion? Please vote.
Seven yeas, 1 nay by Sunday.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next is item D1, Ordinance 1975, an ordinance to amend Papillion Municipal Code 205-218G, having to do with golf course fences. The applicant is Councilmember Mr. Mumgarde. Is there a councilman who will introduce? Introduced by Councilman Mumgarde. Item D2, Ordinance 2022, an ordinance to amend Chapter 170, Subdivision of Land, Article 4, Plat Review and Submittal Requirements of the City of Papillion Municipal Code, having to do with the preliminary plat submittal materials as it relates to the comprehensive plan amendments to adopt stormwater policies for the Papillion Creek and Southern Sarpy watersheds. The applicant's City of Papillion. Is there a councilman who will introduce? Introduced by Councilman Glover. D3, related item, an ordinance to amend Chapter 206, Stormwater Management of the Papillion Municipal Code, having to do with stormwater permitting and regulatory action as it relates to the adoption of stormwater policies for the Papillion Creek and Southern Sarpy watersheds. Councilman will introduce. Introduced by Councilman Ingberg. E1, public hearings, ordinance 2020, an ordinance to amend Chapter 35 of the Papillion Municipal Code regarding procurement. It's a public hearing. I'll open it. Are there any proponents or opponents? I'll close the public hearing. Item E2, ordinance 2021, an ordinance to amend 2023-2024 salary ranges for management exempt positions. It's a public hearing. I'll open it. Any proponents or opponents? Close the public hearing. We have a number of development items. Item F1, Ordinance 1980, an ordinance to approve a change of zone from AG agricultural to R4 multifamily residential for the property legally described as Tax Lot 9, Tax Lot 1B, and Tax Lot 2, all located in Section 3, Township 13 North, Range 12 east of the 6 p.m., Sarpy County, Nebraska, generally located southwest of South 84th Street and Schramm Road. The applicant's Richland Homes. Is there a motion to approve Ordinance 1980? Motion by Councilman Stubbe. Second by Councilman Fanslow. Staff is recommending a motion to amend to add language to authorize the rezoning to go in effect in phases. Is there a motion to amend Ordinance 1980? Motion by Councilman Klug. Second by Councilman Glover. Any proponents or opponents on the motion to amend? Any council discussion on the motion to amend? Please vote on the motion to amend.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion is amended. Proponents?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Larry Jobin, 11440 West Center Road, appearing on behalf of the developer and the development. With me tonight is Caleb Beasley of E&A Consulting, the consulting engineers on this particular project. I really don't have any thing to add to the rezoning ordinance other than we're here to answer any questions that you might have. The public hearings are on the subdivision agreement and the revised preliminary plat that will be coming up here shortly on the agenda.
Thank you. Any council discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Looking at one thing on the agenda. Bear with me 1 second. I want to look at one thing on the agenda. Consent. I'm good. I want to make sure liquor license was on the consent and not down at the end because I didn't want those people to have to sit through the whole agenda, but it was on consent, so we're okay. Thank you. That motion passes as amended. Item F2, Resolution R240048, a public hearing and a vote. A resolution to approve a revised preliminary plat for the property legally described as Tax Lot 9, Tax Lot 1B, and Tax Lot 2, all located Section 3, Township 13 North, Range 12 east of the 6 p.m., Sarpy County, Nebraska, generally located southwest of 84th Street and Schramm Road. The applicant's Richland Homes. It is a public hearing. I'll open it. Proponents?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Larry Jobin, 11440 West Center Road, appearing on behalf of the developer and the development. This is the revised preliminary plat. I was just going to kind of point out some very, very minor changes, if you will, to the original preliminary plat that was approved by this council some time ago. The revisions really relate to the phasing of the development. This development, if you recall, has really two developers. You've got Hubble doing the first phase, and you've got Jerry Torsen doing the second phase. The first phase that's coming online is the Hubble phase, and so the source and use of funds originally had it as one entirety being developed at once. It's now going to be developed in phases, so I'll point that out here in a minute. And then there was just a minor change. Well, this is actually the phasing plan. Oh, can we turn this on? Yeah, so that shows us the phase 1 and 2. And then that carries through to the subdivision agreement with the source and use of funds and on the phasing of the, kind of the financing, if you will, of the public improvement. So that was the one change that we had. The other change that we had from the original preliminary plat, the original preliminary plat here in this location had a cul-de-sac with a lot configuration like this. The revised preliminary plat, I think, made it a better configuration. It changed, so this is now a through street that comes through there, and these lots were then reconfigured. So that's really the only changes between the original preliminary plat that was approved and this revised preliminary plat. So we're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Mumgarden.
Mr. Jobin, you've been in the development business for a number of years, and so I'm going to ask you a question to educate us a little bit, or at least educate me.
Sure.
You use the term phasing, that we're now going to see a change here that would increase the phasing of this development. We see at least one more development coming along that is also a phasing change. And I understand how phasing goes along with financing, and that if you can't get the financing for the whole thing, you have to go piece by piece. Are we seeing more of that now, or is it just that this is coming forward and we're seeing changes that go to the phasing?
Well, so this, if we can turn that back on real quick. So this is the final plat that's before you. So again, here's the revised preliminary plat. Here is, so the cutoff is really like about here. So this is the phase 2, which also has the multifamily lot up here. So all of this is phase 1. This one is a couple things going on. This one is being developed by 2 different developers. So Hubble wanted to go today. Jerry Torsen has enough developments. He has other places that he wanted to kind of put this one on hold while he was doing some of his other developments. So this wasn't necessarily a financing issue, although everything's economics, everything's financing, right? And so if Jerry wasn't ready to put valuation on phase 2, and yet you would have all these public improvement costs and public improvement expenditures, that that would be a drag on the entire subdivision as far as from a financial feasibility perspective, because you'd be accruing interest in all the public indebtedness that would be on the phase 2 public improvements when Mr. Torsen's not ready to really go in there and start building that out. So the idea behind this is to let the developer that wants to go first put in all the public improvements on phase 1, and of course they'll be building houses, and they'll be bringing on valuation, right away to help, pay off that debt and also pay special assessments towards the payment of that indebtedness that's issued by the SID, right? So the idea then is to really push phase 2 out a little further, where when that developer is ready to actually develop and build within that portion of the development, because you wouldn't want to spend all that public money on streets, sewers, and utilities and not be building valuation to make sure that you can redeem that short-term debt. Because remember, warrants mature in 5 years, so you have to have sufficient amount of valuation and a sufficient amount of special assessments paid to issue long-term bonds to redeem the short-term debt. And so that's how all this works. And so since we're obligated to redeem or pay off those warrants in 5 years, we want to make sure we can do so in an appropriate and feasible fashion. So that's why this is being phased.
And I'm with you in that I don't want you to get started and then go bankrupt because you can't.
Nor do we.
You don't have enough equity there. That's not good for anybody.
No.
But on the other hand, when you go into the phasing, what's this mean for the timing of phase 2? Are we really just getting half of a development and then rolling the dice on the future?
Well, we're not, and what I would say about that is the phase 1 really contains a big portion of the public improvements. For example, the subdivision agreement and the final plat requires that we construct 90th Street to what was that, to Schramm Road? Yeah, to Schramm. So 90th Street will be extended all the way. So here's the phase 1. We're not stopping 90th Street at the at the ending point of phase 1, we're actually building the rest of 90th Street to make that connection up to Schramm Road with phase 1. So all the off-site public improvements that are required are really going to be built primarily with phase 1. So really what you're talking about when we do this phase development is you're building the interior public improvements for phase 2. So the district is taking on additional debt, you know, in order to do the off-site public improvements that are necessary. We're just not doing the internal public improvements that would serve just the lots until Mr. Torson's ready to move that forward.
Okay, which phase has that major intersection with Washington Street, 84th Street?
That is all part of phase 1. So if you see here, the street is dedicated, and then eventually, you know, of course, that'll be signalized when it's warranted. But yeah, that's all part of phase 1. So 90th Street going to Schramm, and Summit Ridge Drive going to, I think it's 84th Street or whatever.
Okay, that's my.
Yes. The southern portion, I think, right now, I think it's called for just to go to here. Eventually, when the additional property is developed to the south, that's when the connection will be made to Cape Heart.
Okay.
Yeah, we're only building along our frontage. And Summit Ridge is across the street, across 90th Street. They're also contributing towards the cost of 90th Street. As you know, that I think the council approved $650,000 a month within the last month.
That's just going to be a dead end?
No, eventually it will connect all the
No,
way
I
to
mean,
Cape Heart.
for the time being.
For the
is what I
time being, yeah, it'll serve Summit Ridge and this particular development, because there is no development to the south right now. So
Right.
when that development goes to the south, then of course 90th Street will be constructed to the south and connect with Cape Heart. So ultimately, that's the full build out down the road.
Thank you. Any other proponents? Any opponents? Welcome. And if you'd state your name and address for the record when you come up.
My name is Beth Norris. We can't hear very well back here. Is there speakers you can turn up for these microphones or not? Whether it's this one, anybody up here, it's very hard to hear back in the Buffalo's Church. I'd call them pews. But Beth Norris, 2425 Corn Drive, Papillion, Nebraska. I'm just coming in because I was reading both for this and for the agreement, and try to keep the two separate and stuff. But my concern is, does the developer have the right of way to build 90th Street? Has all that been secured already? Will 90th Street be built before they start bringing in construction vehicles, or is everything going to go in and out of 84th, or whatever they call their Summit Drive onto 84th? That's my major concern, is will 90th be built before any other construction vehicles come in and out of there? We live right on Corn Drive. We exit out onto 84th Street. Just this Saturday, we had to go right on 84th in order to go south. We had to go out and around because the traffic on 84th Street is just increasing month by month. It's just getting crazy. So do they have that? If they don't get it, will the whole project be shut down?
Thank you.
And I guess, when is it going to come? Will houses be built before 90th Street is built? That will only leave the entrance and exit to 84th Street. And when he talked about phase 2, is there a timeline in which phase 2 gets started, or does it sit there as an empty lot that's either going to get eroded due to rain, which it is being right now, or will there be weed control if it gets overgrown by weeds? Will there be designated construction entrances, since there's so few roads into this whole development? We're talking 2 roads into this entire development. So will there be designated construction entrances? Like to the south of, it's not even really a road, but the heavy equipment has been using it to the south of the development there. It's a partial road to where the right-of-way, I think, for the I can't remember what that right-of-way's for. Was it originally the railroad or whatever? They've been using that. I'm just really concerned about the safety of everybody who drives on 84th and everything that's going on with everything being so unclear with this project.
Thank you. Any other opponents? Any council questions? Mr. Jobin.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I should have mentioned there is an interlocal cooperation agreement that is actually currently in place today between SID 372, which is the SID for Shadow Creek, and then also the SID for Summit Ridge. It's been in existence since the 90s, I believe, and then also Sarpy County. And so Sarpy County has agreed to acquire all of the right-of-way to Schramm Road to the north for 90th Street. So that is all in place. It's anticipated that that right-of-way will be acquired in the next couple months, and that grading will occur this summer, and 90th Street will be constructed as part of the Phase 1 development. So it will be in, you know, as other public improvements are being installed on the interior of Shadow Creek subdivision.
Mr. Mumgarden.
Okay, that resident raised a question about the traffic on 84th Street. You're going to have a signal there. That's going to be a major intersection. When does the signal come in?
The signal isn't warranted yet, so it has to meet warrants before the signal will be installed. So of course that is based upon traffic volumes, et cetera. I mean, this development eventually, I don't know if you can turn this on, this development, obviously, without this development, there'll never be a signal there, right? With this development, ultimately there will be a signal because the warrants are traffic volumes. Well, with this particular development, you have additional traffic, and so that's what will, you know, cause this traffic signal to be warranted in the future. When that will happen, I don't know. It's whenever the traffic warrants are met, and then that there's provisions in the subdivision agreement to install that when warrants are met, and there's provisions in the subdivision agreement as to how that will be financed and paid for as well.
Thank you. I'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R240048? Motion by Councilman Gaines. Second by Councilman Stube. Any council discussion? If not, please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Related item. F3, Resolution R240049, a resolution to approve a final plat for the property legally described as Tax Lot 9, Tax Lot 1B, and Tax Lot 2, all located in Section 3, Township 13, North Range 12, east of the 6 p.m. Sarpy County, Nebraska, generally located southeast of South 84th Street and Schramm Road. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R240049? Motion by Councilman Stube. Second by Councilman Gaines. Any council discussion? Please vote.
Eight yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Also related item, item F4, Resolution R240050, a public hearing and a vote, a resolution to approve the Shadow Creek subdivision agreement. It's a public hearing. I'll take all the comments from the previous item over to this one, but if there's any other proponents or opponents.
Members of the council, Larry Jobin, 11440 West Center Road, appearing on behalf of the developer and the development. Simply here to answer any questions, but obviously the subdivision agreement is how it dictates what public improvements are required, and then how are they going to be defrayed, either privately or publicly, and if they're publicly, which portion is specially assessed, which portion is general obligation debt. So this is kind of a standard subdivision agreement. Also calls for 90th Street to be constructed, the traffic signal at 84th, and Summer Ridge Drive, and all of those improvements that will be required at some point in the future. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any other proponents or opponents? I'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion to approve yes. Mr. Stube.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. There's some discussion about the traffic signal, and if you go into the subdivision agreement, when it becomes warranted, I think it's important to note that the district is responsible for that cost of that traffic signal. It's not a responsibility of the city.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R240050? Motion, go ahead. I think I closed the public hearing too quick. Go ahead. I'll reopen it.
Well, another comment was made about the traffic signal. I don't think I brought that piece of paper. But there was, I was here at a previous meeting about the traffic signal, and the discussion was that if the city needed to fund it prior to the developer paying to put it in, that the city would look at that. And I think that was, it's probably in the record because I spoke about this in one of the previous meetings. So I don't know if we need to go back and look at previous meetings records about that, but the city did in the council meeting offer up the possibility of funding that signal ahead of time if the developer was unable to
Just
to-
for
to do it
public
that time.
education, Mr. Kleffner, can you explain a little bit of warrants and how signals are determined when? And then what would happen if we would do it ahead of time?
Typically what happens with the traffic signal is that there's traffic counts. We're related to the crossroads at those intersections. Also, we can count accidents, things along those lines. The federal government, the MUTCD, has 8 different warrants to install a traffic signal. For us to install a traffic signal, it would need to be one of those 8 warrants to warrant the traffic signal. If we were to install a traffic signal prior to meeting one of those warrants, studies have shown that there actually tends to be more accidents due to a signal that's installed before a warrant is met, and those traffics actually, studies have shown that there are actually significantly higher casualty rates due to those accidents.
Thank you.
So what is the timeline for the developer to install a traffic signal if a warrant is met?
Once the warrant is met, we would advise the SID that they need to install the signal. Typically, between the time that the warrant is met for the traffic signal and a traffic signal to be installed typically is anywhere from 18 months to 24 months, just due to design at the time and then availability of materials.
Thank you.
So we potentially have a dangerous intersection for 18 months to 2 years without a signal. If a warrant's been met, we basically have a dangerous intersection?
No. Typically for what we would consider to be a dangerous intersection, it would be a significant number of accidents, and that would be what we would call a different warrant, and that would be a safety warrant, and there would be accidents at that intersection that would deem it to be unsafe.
And who monitors that?
Typically, it's if there's a safety issue. Typically, if there's more than 1 or 2 accidents within a year at a specific intersection, the police department will bring it to my department's attention, or would be the county's attention, and then we would examine it. Occasionally, even the state will bring it to our attention because the state keeps those records for accidents, and if they see a pattern within a specific area, they advise the entity that has jurisdiction over that area of an issue, and then we take that internally and we would review that situation and determine, one, what are the causes of the accidents, what's the situation related to each accident, and then evaluate it from there.
And what happens if there's a deadly accident before you even do your traffic study?
I want to be careful that we're in public hearing. It's not intended to be a lot of give and take.
No, I
No,
know,
I understand. What
but-
we'll do is we'll offer Mr. Kleffner up after the meeting for some in-depth discussion for you.
So
We
you're
do have
not-
noted for the public hearing, though, the concern on the safety issues. But for the education, we'll go ahead and make sure that he can get in contact with you and go as in-depth as you want to on the education of it.
Okay, well,
Thank
I'm
you.
not the only one here that's concerned about that new intersection that's being built.
We can pull multiple people together. Mr. Mumgard.
I'll just simply say, yeah, there are ways for us as a city to install that traffic signal quicker than it would be done on the usual. So keep coming back, keep reminding us. If you think it's a problem, show up and tell us. Thank you.
And part of that process, too, we do have residents that periodically will bring an intersection or a stoplight or a signal of a concern, and we do have a public safety committee of the council then that will review those one-off items ahead of the warrants as well.
So those come up to the public safety.
So, thank you. I'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R240050? Motion by Councilman Fanslow. Second by Councilman Stube. Any council discussion? Please, Mr. Mumgard. Oh, okay. Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Item F5, Resolution R240051, a resolution to approve the Shadow Creek Sewer and Water Connection Agreement. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R240051? Motion by Councilman Gaines, second by Councilman Stube. Any proponents or opponents? Council discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Item F6, Ordinance 2002. An ordinance to approve a change of zone from AG Agricultural to CC Community Commercial and R4 PUD2 Multifamily Residential with a specific planned unit development overlay for the property legally described as a tract of land located in southeast quarter of the southwest quarter of Section 36, Township 14 North, Range 12 east of the 6 p.m. Sarpy County, generally located on the northwest corner, South 66th Street and Shram Road. The applicant is Spruce Capital Group, LLC, Erie Town Center, formerly known as Ty Farm. Is there a motion to approve Ordinance 2002? Motion by Councilman Fanslow. Second by Councilman Glover. Staff is recommending a motion to amend to change the subdivision name to Erie Town Center and add language to authorize the rezoning to go in effect in phases. Is there a motion to amend? Motion by Councilman Ingberg. Second by Councilman Mumgard. Any council discussion on the motion to amend? Mr. Mumgard. Okay. Please vote on the motion to amend.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion is amended. Do we have any proponents or opponents?
Jobin, 11440 West Center Road, appearing on behalf of the developer. I'm just simply here for questions. This is pretty much what was presented throughout the preliminary plat process. So, here for questions.
Thank you. Mr.
Well,
Mumgard.
Okay, I don't know if you're the one or just staff. I want to talk about when 66th Street gets built, but I don't want to talk about it until I get to the one that really, which item do I want to talk about?
That would be the next item, item 7 on the revised preliminary plat. Is the very next item is when we're.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other proponents or opponents? Council discussion? Please vote on the motion as amended.
7 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. F7, Resolution R240060, public hearing and a vote. Resolution to approve a revised preliminary plat for the property legally described as a tract of land located in the southeast quarter, the southwest quarter, Section 36, Township 14 North, Range 12 east of the 6 p.m. Sarpy County, Nebraska. Generally located northwest corner, 66th Street in Sharam. The applicant, Spruce Capital Group. It's a public hearing. I'll open it. Proponents.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Larry Jobin, 11440 West Center Road, appearing on behalf of the developer. This is the revised preliminary plat. The revised preliminary plat really was for a couple of reasons. Number one, you mentioned as part of the zoning, we've been calling this the Ty subdivision. Obviously, that's the Ty family's name that owned that property, and we thought, well, maybe that shouldn't be the name of the subdivision. We should change it to what the development is really going to be called. So part of the revised preliminary plat was to change the name to Erie at Town Center, and so that was one of the reasons for the revised preliminary plat. Also, we are doing this again as a phased development, kind of for the reasons we talked about earlier from a feasibility perspective. So we're going to do the south portion of the development first as phase 1, and then the north portion of the development as phase 2. And that will trigger certain things with respect to 66th Street that we can talk about. And what the subdivision agreement is, there's no public hearing for the subdivision agreement, but what the subdivision agreement does is it says, essentially, we can turn this on. So this is the proposed development, and nothing has changed with respect to the site plan. It's the same unit counts, it's the same everything that was before the Planning Commission and this council with the original preliminary plat. So nothing whatsoever has changed with respect to the types of units, the elevations, the site plan, the number of units. What we decided to do is have it more of a phasing plan. And let's see if I have. It's effectively this, so this would be phase 1, and this would be phase 2, right along that line. So. What roadway is that? What's that? Along north edge there, phase 1, what roadway would that be? This, actually, it's on Town Center Drive, which is this drive right here, goes east to west from 66th Street to the property to the west. That will be constructed with phase 2. Right now, the access points are along Schramm. So Schramm Road with phase 1 will be constructed from about, I think it's 71st Street. That was, if you recall, it was Schramm from, I believe, about 69th or 70th Street to 72nd Street was constructed by 72 Place, which is the development to the south of Schramm. And that agreement, and then this subdivision agreement that we have with RE at Town Center, calls for RE at Town Center to construct Schramm Road from the terminus of what 72 Place did to 66th Street. And so the access for this development to the south will be onto Schramm at this location and at this location as well. So there won't be any need up front to build Town Center Drive until the second phase of the development goes forward. And the density on the phase 2 is substantially higher density than the phase 1. The phase 1 is much more spread out and much less dense than the kind of traditional multifamily buildings here shown in this location. So the access points onto Schramm Road will serve the phase 1 development perfectly fine, with Schramm Road being constructed to 66th Street. So the idea then again was to change the name of the plat, also to provide for this phasing, and then also then to provide for 66th Street. And that's the subdivision agreement, and there's no public hearing on that, but we can talk about that here if you'd like. The subdivision agreement says essentially that 66th Street from Schramm to Highway 370 will be constructed really on 2 triggering events. Phase 2 going forward, and or if the city wants it installed for some reason that there's some traffic need. As you know, there's the regional park that's a little bit further to the south. That's not, being built yet or anything else, but it's in the master plan, your parks plan, to be developed. You got the high school, Papillion, La Vista High School is to the south of here also, but I don't think they have any plans to start that school at this point. At some point, 66th Street will clearly be needed, but it's a fairly significant and fairly substantial public improvement project. There's a lot of grade change, there's a lot of grading, and there's a lot of cost to it. I think we're looking at it, and I can't recall if it's a 3-lane road section. I think that it's a 3-lane road section from Schramm to Highway 370, plus there's traffic signal improvements on Highway 370 and 66th Street as well. And so this development right now with phase 1 is bringing the sanitary sewer fairly far north all the way south under Highway 370 to this particular development. So this development with phase 1 has a fairly significant offsite public improvements between Schramm Road being constructed and also bringing that sanitary outfall sewer. So with phase 1, we couldn't possibly afford to construct 66th Street at this stage, but there's provisions in our subdivision agreement that will provide for when that 66th Street will be developed. Obviously, if the property to the east gets developed sooner than later, that would be also a contributing, financial contribution to 66th Street. So, and I know that the gentleman spoke in the past that he has no interest in selling the property to the east, but if he ever did, that would obviously contribute to and speed the construction of 66th Street up. But again, under the subdivision agreement, the city has the ability to do it, and we would have to contribute at that point, or when we do phase 2, we'll have to construct 66th Street. So,
Mr. Sunday, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have a follow-up on phase 2.
Sure.
I see we have multifamily on the west side of phase 2. It looks like future
Yeah,
Commercial, is that what? was
yeah,
that-
that's community commercial, that's
So,
being rezoned
so what is
CC.
what does a developer envision for their office buildings or actual
It
retail
could,
or?
it could be commercial, office, retail, correct. I mean, the idea was to do some kind of community commercial. We decided not to do a mixed-use zoning because we didn't really have any plans. We'd just be kind of drawing things. So what we did is we decided that a base district zoning today would be better, just designating it as community commercial. You know, one of the impediments or I guess challenges of this site has always been the grade change, the drainage way that comes along this direction, and then also you've got that 100-foot OPPD easement that comes and creates kind of this X. So it's a challenging piece of property for commercial development, but being on the hard corner of 66th and Highway 370, we think that there'll be some demand and desire for commercial uses at that location, that corner.
That answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other, Mr. Mumgarden?
Well, okay, going back a year plus when you were here for the first time, I made it pretty clear that I think 66th Street is critical for the community. At that time, I was kind of anticipating that you would go with the multifamily first, because that's commonly done. You generate the revenue from the multifamily, and then you start building the houses. You're going the opposite direction. You're going houses first. I get what you're saying about 66th Street. It is, because of the terrain, going to be a tremendously expensive street to build. I made it clear back when you were here the first time that you wouldn't get my vote unless you were going to build 66th Street. And you made some promises, and I think they're in the subdivision agreement. So I'm looking at this as a worthwhile compromise. I would like to see, clearly I would like to see 66th Street built in the other direction from the highway back first, so that these people have a way to get to the highway without going down to 72nd Street, because those houses are going to create problems over on 72nd Street. There's just no way of looking at it. But then on the other hand, I realize you're not going to do it. So I'm not going to ask you to demand something you're not going to do. Let's go ahead and get the best we can.
Mm-hmm.
And you've represented that the agreement is solid and it's there, and we can pull the trigger and make you do it and all that kind of stuff. Well, you're way beyond me. I'll trust you telling me the truth. So you're going to get my vote simply because I guess this is the best we're going to do, and we will see how it develops. And if those houses, you got several hundred houses there, and if they all have two cars coming and going every day, if they're creating that problem on 76th Street that I can fully envision, yeah, we might be talking about this again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I guess the only thing I would add is the density. So, I know it's kind of interesting. It looks like it's more dense on the phase one and the south portion of the development, but there are only 165 units on this section. So they're the cottages, they're the kind of the direct access apartments, and I've got these drawings of those. The units, the number of units on this section here, which is lot 4, that's actually 240 units on the north. So it's significantly higher density on the north or the phase 2 property than it is on the phase 1 property, primarily because of the housing type that is on phase 1 versus phase 2. So
I'll tell you, no way you get my support on phase 2
without
66th Street connecting to the highway.
And that's a requirement. So we couldn't even come in here without having 66th Street being called for.
Yeah,
So
and I would point out that, okay, your 163 houses, well, that's 300 cars every day coming and going. So let's don't minimize it. We'll wait and see. Maybe you've got the great plan, and we'll wait and see.
And I would tell you that it was a good compromise. We did work with staff, regarding 66th Street and all the public improvements too. And we all recognize that 66th Street at some point has to make that connection to 370 because of the things that are going on to the south and the east of this development. So it will be installed, and this will help have it installed at some point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have any other proponents? Do you have any opponents? If you'd state your name and address for the record, welcome.
Hello, Terry Ty, 14102 South 108th Street. First and foremost, I don't feel this is a good use for this property. I feel this location would be better utilized as business or commercial instead of a 40-acre residential rental location. This is a poor choice for tenants and the city. Rarely have I heard of tenants looking to live close by to a busy highway. However, businesses do like close proximity to major roads. I've listened to the council discuss issues with slumlords and bad tenants. Bringing in this many tenants are bound to have a percentage that are bad actors. This is going to add to the duties of code enforcement. I'd like to point out that a lot of those yellow buildings, those are fourplex, threeplex, sixplexes. They're not single individual owner occupied homes. Another area of concern is access to the area. As Mr. Mumgard brought up, July 18th, the city councilman asked about benchmarks and triggers to prompt the construction to complete 66th Street north to Highway 370. He was promised by the developer to include in these plans. They have since returned with a new plan utilizing a Phase 1, Phase 2 concept that has no mention of benchmarks or triggers for the construction of 66th Street, other than it will be done in Phase 2. It was mentioned that the reason for the delay of 66th Street was due to financial limitations of the developer. It's rare that a project of this size does not run into unforeseen costs. I feel that even starting the project of this size without proper and complete financial plans in place is doomed to fail. His cuts need to come from somewhere. With the council supporting this project, they are taking responsibility as a stakeholder, and if it struggles, it'll reflect unfavorably on the council. The developer stated that since money was tight, he is looking at cost sharing with neighbors and future developers to help defray the cost of developing 66th Street. Councilman Sunday stated that Titan Springs developed 66th Street up to Highway 370, north of Highway 370 on their own, with no additional financial help from adjacent landowners. As mentioned, the access to the area is only available from Schramm Road. Yes, there's two roads that enter into Phase 1 Town Center, but both empty onto Schramm Road. Schramm Road is currently filling the needs of apartment tenants in Place 72, and as Place 72 is starting its own Phase 2 behind the apartments with residential housing. This road is going to be congested with contractor, tradesmen, cement trucks, delivery vehicles, and more. Double this for the Aerial Town Center Phase 1 construction, and it's a bad mix for any emergency vehicles, let alone daily traffic. Even when 66th Street is developed in Phase 2, I understand it to be an intersect into the right in, right out with Town Center Parkway. It's divided with an island and no cut through. This means that going east on the Parkway will not allow for northbound traffic onto Highway 370, and southbound traffic on 66 will not be allowed to turn west onto the Parkway. Do I understand that the only three streets the city Papillion will control are Town Center Drive, 66th Street, and Schramm Road? Does that mean all the other interior roads are private streets to be maintained and repaired by the developer? Will the city patrol and control parking along these streets? Should parking get out of hand along these streets? Who's going to enforce this so emergency vehicles can safely traverse them? Are city zoning and setbacks enforced along these streets, as well as side yard setbacks between the residential houses? Many of these spaces between buildings appear narrow. Are first responders expected to traverse between these buildings if they can't get in between with the vehicles? Quite a few zoning and code for setbacks and heights have been waived for this development. Will exceptions like this be made for all developers?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Also want to note that we got an email in opposition from Carla Ty as well, and you all have a copy of that. Do we have any other opponents? I'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion to approve resolution R240060? Motion by Councilman Mumgard, second by Councilman Fanslow. Council discussion. Mr. Sunday.
The gentleman is correct. It's my understanding that the developer of Titan Springs, which is across the highway from this location straight north, did put in 66th Street on his own. I don't know if the city helped out or not, but I know the adjacent landowners did not. That is true. That's all.
Thank you. I'll give him an opportunity just because he was here at that time. Mr. Sturzma, any recollection or any comment on that?
Titan Springs preceded me. However, it is pretty common that there's a future reimbursement assigned to adjacent property. So there may be an expectation that when that property develops, there's a reimbursement to Titan Springs, but I don't have specific knowledge of this agreement in that situation.
Thank you. Any other council discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Related item F8, Resolution R240061. A resolution to approve a final plat for the property legally described as a tract of land located in the southeast quarter, southwest quarter, Section 36, Township 14 North, Range 12 East of the 6 p.m. Sarpy County, generally located northwest corner, 66th Street in Schramm. The applicant Spruce Capital Group, Erie Town Center. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R240061? Motion by Councilman Glover, second by Councilman Gaines. Any proponents or opponents? And I'll carry all the previous comments over to this item since it is related. Any council discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Related item F9, Resolution R240062. A resolution to approve the Erie Town Center subdivision agreement. Motion to approve Resolution R240062. Motion by Councilman Ingberg, second by Councilman Klug. Any council discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Also related item, Resolution R240063, a public hearing and a vote. Resolution to approve the Erie Town Center Planned Unit Development Agreement. It's a public hearing. Proponents.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Larry Jobin, 11440 West Center Road, appearing on behalf of the developer. This is being developed through a planned unit development. So the way I describe a planned unit development is what you see is what you get. So if we make any major changes to the planned unit development, the site plan, building locations, even the elevations in some respects, that could be deemed to be a major amendment to the planned unit development agreement, which would require that we come back to planning and this council. So I would say it's what you see is what you get. So that's what I've shown you is what you're going to get, and that's all set forth in the planned unit development agreement. And it sets forth some additional site regulators and some things relating to the specific development that supports the site plan that I shared with you earlier. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any other proponents or opponents? And again, I'll carry the previous comments over as well for the record. Close the public hearing. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R240063? Motion by Councilman Fanslow. Second by Councilman Klug. Any council discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Another related item. Motion passes. Another related item, F11, Resolution R240064. Resolution to approve the Erie Town Center Sewer and Water Connection Agreement. It's a motion to approve Resolution R240064. Motion by Councilman Gaines. Second by Councilman Ingberg. Any proponents or opponents? Council discussion. Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. F12, Ordinance 2013, an ordinance to approve a change of zone from AG Agricultural to MU Mixed Use R4 Multifamily Residential and RE Residential Estates for the property legally described as part of Tax Lot 7, Section 12, Township 13 North, Range 12 East of the 6 p.m., Sarpy County, Nebraska, generally located on the southeast corner, South 72nd Street and Cape Art Road. The applicant's Gene Graves, Oakleaf, phases 2 through 5. Is there a motion to approve Ordinance 2013? Motion by Councilman Stubbe. Second by Councilman Glover. Any discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Related item on Oakleaf, F13, Resolution R240065, a resolution to approve the final plat for the property legally described as part of Tax Lot 7, Section 12, Township 13 North, Range 12 east of the 6 p.m., Sarpy County, Nebraska, generally located on the southeast corner, South 72nd Street and Cape Art Road. Applicants Gene Graves, Oakleaf, Phase 2. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R240065? Motion by Councilman Klug. Second by Councilman Gaines. Any proponents or opponents?
The council, Larry Jobin, 11440 West Center Road, appearing on behalf of the developer, Gene Graves. Gene apologizes he couldn't be here tonight. His wife had surgery this morning, so he had to take care of her tonight. But I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any opponents? Council discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. F14, Resolution R240066. Public hearing and a vote. A resolution to approve the First Amendment to the Oakleaf subdivision agreement. It's public hearing. Proponents or opponents?
Mayor, members of the council, Larry Jobin, 11440 West Center Road, appearing on behalf of the developer, Gene Graves. This is just an amendment to the existing subdivision agreement for Oakleaf. It just calls for the public infrastructure that needs to be installed to support this particular mixed-use area, and that's really all it is, and it's pretty standard.
Thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
other proponents or opponents? Close the public hearing. Is motion to approve Resolution R240066? Motion by Councilman Fanslow. Second by Councilman Stubbe. Any discussion? Please vote.
Eight yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Related item F15, Resolution R240067, a public hearing and a vote. Resolution to approve the Oakleaf Mixed-Use Development Agreement. Again, public hearing. Proponents or opponents?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Larry Jobin, 11440 West Center Road, appearing on behalf of the developer. Also with me tonight is Jake Hoppy, who's doing the residential portion of this mixed-use area. And so we're both here to answer any questions. The mixed-use development agreement, obviously, very similar in some respects to the PUD that we just saw before. This is just through mixed-use zoning. It's essentially zoning by contract, and it calls for different zones. Let me turn this on. So we developed this, I don't know if you can see it that well, but there's zone 1, which is the commercial lots, and there's zone 2 that has one housing type that the Hoppy Development is proposing to develop, and then there's a third zone with different housing types as well. And so tied to each one of those zones are specific housing types and proposed elevations. They're all part of the mixed-use development agreement. I won't belabor that point, but everything is pretty much called out in the mixed-use development agreement with respect to the site plan, the type of units, the number of units, and the site regulators specifically. So again, if mixed use is sort of what you see is what you get as well. So if there's a major change, then we'll be back to the Planning Commission, back to this council. There are always minor amendments sometimes when you're not really changing the concept or the real intent or purpose of the proposed development through the mixed-use development agreement. So again, here, happy to answer any questions. I know Jake Hoppy is here as well if you have any questions regarding the residential portion that they're developing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other proponents or opponents? Close the public hearing. Motion to approve Resolution R240067. Motion by Councilman Klug. Second by Councilman Gaines. Any discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. F16, Resolution R240068. Resolution to approve the Oakleaf on-street parking maintenance agreement. Motion to approve Resolution R240068. Motion by Councilman Ingberg. Second by Councilman Stubbe. Proponents or opponents? Council discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Also related to Oakleaf, Resolution R240069. Resolution to approve the Oak Leaf Access Easement Agreement. Motion to approve Resolution R240069. Motion by Councilman Sunday. Second by Councilman Glover. Proponents or opponents? Council discussion. Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. F18, R240070, a public hearing and a vote. A resolution to approve the First Amendment to the Highway 370 Mixed-Use Development Subdivision Agreement. It's a public hearing. I'll open it. Any proponents? Welcome.
Mr. Mayor, Brett Beller, 1140 West Center Road, on behalf of the applicant. This is our, if you've seen the Tower District, we're moving from where we were 4 years ago to where we are now. We actually just had our first lot closing, so things are steadily progressing. This First Amendment to the subdivision agreement, as part of those initial closings, we replatted some of our lots right on Cedardale and worked with staff to adjust the entrance off Cedardale and 84th Street. So with the subdivision agreement, we allocated some costs, and because we changed some of the sources and uses, we had to amend the subdivision agreement to do that. And then also in partnership with the city, we're improving 90th Street. And so this amendment also takes that into effect, and that obviously adjusts the sources and uses on that as well. So we're here for any questions. We appreciate staff support and recommendation for approval.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mumgard.
Oh, okay, clarify for me. It seems this amendment deals primarily with the infrastructure rather than the overall use of the land and what's going to happen there in the Tower District.
Yeah, this isn't changing anything other than there are increased costs for Cedardale. And then also we have changed, and the next item on your agenda is the SID was the lead on South 90th Street. Now the city is taking the lead, and we also have new costs for that project. So we adjusted the sources and uses to accommodate that.
But overall, the use and the development of the Tower District remains the same after this.
We haven't touched anything. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Fanslow.
Hey, Brent, I got you said first lot closing. Is that a residential lot? Or is
Commercial.
Commercial.
Oh, of course you would catch me. We've had about 12 residential
that's what I
closings.
thought. So this is the first commercial
This is the
lot.
first commercial.
Okay.
And much of those residential closings, those were starting last year. So I misspoke. This is the first commercial closing.
Thanks.
And I watched the assessor's website on the sales, and I believe the commercial one, he actually closed on 2 separate lots, didn't he?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. That's
Ms. Klug.
I do have an amendment for this. Is it acceptable to do that now, or would you prefer to go further into the public
We're still in
hearing?
public hearing, so we'll close the public hearing, then we'll take a motion. That'll put it on the floor, then we'll do the amendment, if that's okay. Okay. Thank you. Any other proponents or opponents? When you come up, if you just state your name and address for the record. Welcome.
I'm Carol Koontz, 1012 South Madison in Papillion. And just a statement, I do not want Harrison Street to go through. That school, the park, everything, I want it to stay the same. That park is very, very important to me and to the school.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other opponents? And if you just state your name and address for the record.
Terry Perez, 403 Valley Road. I live immediately next to Trumbull Park, and we've been asked to write letters, send emails, make phone calls to oppose, and I have done all of the above. However, I've heard nothing as to why this continues to move forward. That park is heavily used. It is heavily used and has been heavily used for many, many years. And I've never heard any good reason why this is proceeding, why this plan is going forward.
Ms. Perez, could I interrupt for a second? What is it you're specifically opposed to?
The removal of the Park A and Harrison Street going through.
Okay. I thought that was the case, but I wanted everybody to understand. Okay, thank you.
Note number 3 and note number 6. Yes, Valley Road is already congested. To move that through, it risks the safety of the kids in that neighborhood who use that park heavily. If somebody can give me information at some point, and I understand this is not the forum, but I would like to understand why that park is being removed. I would appreciate some feedback at some point.
Thank you. Any other opponents? I'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R240070? Motion by Councilman Gaines. Second by Councilman Mumgarde. Ms. Klug does have a motion, and I believe your motion is going to be somewhat related to the testimony that was just given. So we'll carry those comments over to proponents and opponents on the motion to amend as well. Ms. Klug.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to move that Resolution R240070 be amended as follows in summary and as specifically outlined in the proposed amendment provided to the council members. To amend by addition the First Amendment to Highway 370 Mixed-Use Development Subdivision Agreement in the following manner. To amend Section 2A17 to add reference to the pedestrian connection extension to be constructed by the city. To amend Section 10H2 to require a city determination of necessity regarding the construction of the South Harrison Street extension prior to the right-of-way dedication and authorization such dedication. To outline requirements for commencement of construction of a South Harrison Street pedestrian connection and set a timeline and triggering construction events contingent upon council appropriation of funds, pedestrian connection costs to be defrayed by the city. To further amend Section 10H2 to clarify there is no obligation to construct the South Harrison Street extension until authorized by the city. The City Council may evaluate traffic conditions within the area prior to such authorization. If the City Council deems the South Harrison Street extension is warranted, City will notify the district and developer of authorization and a timeline for construction. The district or developer will be responsible for defraying the entire costs of the South Harrison Street extension pursuant to the subdivision agreement. I do have comments, but we'll wait until such appropriate motions.
Do we have a second? Second by Councilman Gaines. I think I'll call for a proponents, and then council discussion on the motion to amend. So we do have a motion to amend. Are there any proponents or opponents on the motion to amend? Council discussion. Ms. Klug.
I know I've had a few people ask me why go with a pedestrian bridge as opposed to a street. Well, in my belief, it creates a safe way for our youth and families to cross from the new development over to the school, which will be the primary reason why families are crossing the creek. It will also allow the families to get back and forth safely. It will also save the park space, the Trumbull Park Park, which is currently used by many, many families within the area. You only have to go there during the summer or after school to see how many families are currently using it. If we put a street through there, we will lose most, if not all, of the Trumbull Park Park. This is contrary to the values of our city when we talk about family first and the place where we want to raise our families. We want to make sure that we are using our taxpayer dollars correctly and efficiently. By utilizing the pedestrian bridge, we will save tax dollars money, and we will not be inhibiting people. The distance to go from the north side of Trumbull Park down to the school and to go from Rawhide Road across the creek will be approximately the same. This means the families living in the new developmental area will be able to easily drop off and pick up their children on the south side of the school in the same way that the families are doing it on the north side of the school. I'm simply asking, can we maintain the values of family first and keeping our residents safe, protecting what our current residents have come to expect in their neighborhoods, and having it established that this is the way it will be for those that choose to move into this new part of our community. I hope you can all see the logic in the pedestrian bridge and will vote for this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council discussion? Mr. Gaines.
I want to thank Councilwoman Klug for coming up with this amendment. While I would prefer that the Harrison Street connection never is an option, in the spirit of connectivity, I'll leave it open. If this council or future council decides that it's a necessity, then I guess so be it. We can put it through. To echo some of the same things, I'm not going to repeat what you said, but I feel the same way that you do as far as getting rid of the park. One of the main purposes for this connectivity was to provide residents that lived on the north side of the creek easier access to this development, and it's ironic that those residents don't want the access. And so I will be supporting this because I think a pedestrian bridge fits better, and that's it.
Mr. Glover.
So I'm going to support this also. I've lived in this community close to 50 years. I worked for 32 years for the school district and watched them put schools in many places that they shouldn't have been, or they didn't properly design cars and parking and the amount of parking that they would need for these schools. If you think back, these are all neighborhood schools, these older elementary schools, smaller schools, and everybody walked back in the day. And back at that time, even the parents didn't walk with the kids. It was a safe environment. Now, if you look at it, and if you've been down there, because I rode down with Mr. Mumgard and myself went down and drove through there, and it's not any different, like I said, in the other older elementary schools. But what you have is the only parking they have for staff is sitting right on the street. There's no room for anybody to walk behind those cars without being in the street. There's no room to expand the street or parking on the other side of the road because there's a swamp area that we designed because we moved it from up by the Papillion Vista High School and down that road. So when you look at it, I think that this is a viable option for a while to see if we can make it through. If we have to come back at some point, I'm willing to listen to it, but this makes no sense to me under the conditions. There's no parking. There's no place for parents to park on the streets because there's one side there is no street for, and it makes sense that we wait. We were told at one time by the developer that he didn't care whether this street ever went through. And I think about what we'd have to spend to send this street through, and the fact that it is an unsafe environment makes no sense to me that we would do it at this point or probably ever. I would have to agree, but I'd be open at least down the road to look at it if somebody can convince me that we can do this safely and students aren't going to get hurt.
Thank you. Mr. Mumgard.
Well, I have talked about this street extension with Councilmember Klug at length and other council members. As Mr. Glover has pointed out, we were just there driving around looking at it the other day. I was told that an amendment was going to come forward. I was willing to discuss that, willing to think about that. To my surprise, it is not on the agenda. It is just brought in, slipped in at the last minute as an amendment, a major amendment to this otherwise pretty basic amendment of the overall development. As I asked him, the agenda item deals only with some adjustments of the streets, etc. And now we come in and have an amendment that takes away a major part of discussion and disagreement that has been here since the beginning. Look, I've thought about it. I have always been in favor of that street going through, because I think my concern has always been the congestion around the street, around the school. That school is in a lousy spot with traffic and congestion. And I see that Harrison Street extension as a way to get cars in and out of the school very quickly. As Mr. Glover pointed out, you drive down Valley Street and there was a parking lot right up against the school. So I've been in favor of keeping Harrison Street through there. I realize sometimes it isn't going to happen. And I see that the development is going so slow, it is just not working the way I was hoping it would. So certainly, I'm willing to compromise and give up the street and go instead with a pedestrian overpass, as you've discussed with me many times. Yeah, that can work. But not this way. Let's either reject this amendment or hold the whole thing over for one meeting, and so we can have some further discussion about the nuts and bolts that you've laid out here in this amendment, because there's some things in your amendment that I think can be better. For example, you say that the pedestrian overpass would not even begin until, let's face it, 2 years after an apartment building starts getting built there. I'm sorry, but I have become cynical about delay. I have seen it in developments. And I read that and I think, oh, that's just additional delay. You're talking 2.5, 3 years from now before that pedestrian overpass even begins to be built. And I'm saying, well, if we're going to do it, let's do it. Change that to, we'll go in there and we build that pedestrian overpass, and so that next year, when school opens, there's a way to eliminate some of that congestion immediately. I also, as I've talked about, is that, okay, fine, you make a pedestrian overpass, but then on the south side there, where the town center development is, what are you going to have? You're going to have cars sitting there on the street in front of the houses, etc. And I said, okay, but let's have two birds, get two things done at one time. If you build the overpass, then put in a parking lot on the south side of the overpass using A, the street right-of-way, and B, the adjacent lot that we may or may not own, I'm not quite sure. But at least have a place on the south side of the pedestrian overpass for the cars to pull up and wait for their kids, so that they're not sitting in front of the houses that will eventually get built there. So all I'm saying is, yes, I can vote for this giving up. I can give up South Harrison Street. Compromise, that's a word that some people just don't like anymore, but I'm willing to do it. And replace it instead with a pedestrian overpass, see how that works. But this isn't the way to get the amendment in front of us by slipping it in at the last minute. It's not on the agenda. I didn't know we were even going to vote on it until I come in here and ask you, what are you doing with this? And you say it's on the agenda. Well, no, it's not. It's an amendment to something on the agenda. All I'm saying is, no, I'm gonna do two things. I'm going to make a motion, a substitute motion, to hold over resolution R240070 to the next meeting, so we can have more discussion about the pedestrian overpass. And if that fails, then I'm gonna have to vote against this, because it's not the best we can do. And if I'm gonna compromise, I at least and if I'm gonna compromise and lose out on getting Harrison Street there, I at least want something that's the best we can do. So that's where I'm going.
So if I remember my Robert's Rule of Order, I think a motion to table does require a second, but it's not debatable. So is there a second on the motion to hold over? And it is a priority. Oh, I'm sorry, I was thinking you did. So, well, he's made a motion to amend, I mean, a motion to hold over, which I think is a priority motion. I'll confirm with Ms. Hutter. Okay. Okay. So we are still in discussion. Mr. Ingberg.
Well, to be transparent, I grew up on South Harrison Street, so I have some thoughts about it because I've lived there most of my life. And I was the first group of kids that started or that moved into Trumbull Park grade school. So I don't disagree with Councilmember Klug's idea of what she wants to do. And quite honestly, as you all remember, another area that I represent, I discouraged putting in extensions to roads. So I'm not going to be a hypocrite and say, let's do an extension here. You know, I think at this particular time it's probably not necessary. But I will kind of split the baby a little bit here. I think it's a good idea to do the amendment this way. As I said the last time this came before us, and some council people wanted to stop the connection. I said at that time we couldn't do it then because it was part of the original agreement. And they would have to wait to either if another agreement was negotiated or there was a request from the developer. And so here we are. That's exactly what's happening. So you're doing it the right way. I think it's probably a good idea not to do the extension right now. But on the other hand, I wouldn't mind waiting till the next meeting simply because, as Councilman Mumgard said, there's a couple things I noticed too that I would like to have clarified, which is it says that the city can decide when or if they put in the extension. What involvement is the developer going to have, if any, in that discussion? Because it may have some effect on their development. And I also would be curious to know some other process answers that I don't think is specified in here. So while I agree with you that we should not put the extension in right now, I would like to add a few things, maybe clean a few things up, though, before we finalize the agreement. And quite honestly, to be fair, I don't know that developers yet had a chance to respond to it. You know, and if you want, and if you know, and I just think to be fair, that it's an agreement between two groups of people. You ought to at least solicit their opinion, because maybe they'll have a better idea, a different way to do something to accomplish the same thing. So I wouldn't. I plan on supporting Mr. Mumgard's idea of holding it over, because I don't think that will really affect development a great deal. You certainly can answer that if you'd like.
Mr. Beller.
Brent Beller, 1140 Rest Center Road. Couple things. Yes, Mr. Glover, we're kind of Switzerland on this from the developer standpoint. We understand connectivity. Connectivity is good. I think having that connectivity will actually help a little bit on Valley, but at the same time, it's an expense to us. And so not doing it obviously is good. Who wants to spend money? But yes, I mean, we haven't seen this agreement and we're a party to it. So even if you approve it, how do we approve it? Because we haven't seen it and we're a party to that agreement. So the thing we're doing tonight is we're adjusting the sources and uses of funds to reallocate money. How much does this cost? Who's paying for it? Currently, the city's on the hook for $750,000 of that. I think they probably want to know. Staff wants to know how much that will be. So tabling this, I don't necessarily object to it, other than we got to get 90th Street started. And so this kind of puts hold on that, which is already 8 months behind where we want it. So we're not opposed to, if you all want to do something on South Harrison, we're happy to have those conversations within reason, of course. But at the same time, we don't want to sit and wait for 90th Street to go, because we got to get that started.
Well, if we wait till the next council meeting and have a decision then, will that materially change 90th Street?
I don't think so, other than we have to go through the gyrations of the feasibility, the debt ratio, getting that all blessed by staff. I mean, it doesn't happen overnight. Certainly we can look at the language, but it kind of, that's why I said we're a little bit Switzerland. We care, but we don't care. I mean, we want residents to be happy. I think having that connectivity is a good thing, because people will eventually use that to get to 84th Street, but if they don't want to use it, I don't know that we object to that, other than just the principle of connectivity is good.
And you can save a few dollars too.
If we save a few $100,000.
Okay. And then I'll support holding it over for just one more meeting. And that way it doesn't really hurt you, but it gives you an opportunity to see what it might be.
Okay.
Rather than, we're going to pass this tonight, now that we passed it here, I hope you like it.
And I might ask Mr. Kleffner if where they're at on starting South 90th, because I know the next item on your agenda is the approval of the interlocal amendment.
Okay. Well, anyway, that's all I have to say. Again, I don't want to be a hypocrite and not want extension in one place and want it in another. So I'm in favor of delaying it, as Council Member Klug has indicated in this amendment. But I would like us to at least have a little bit of discussion to clarify a little bit more.
I'm going to hold up on your motion just for a second. We got two more in the queue, so we can wrap up the council discussion, and we'll come back if you want a motion. Mr. Sunday.
Thank you. I'd like to commend Councilperson Klug for this amendment. I think it's a great idea. I support it. I guess I'm ambivalent as to whether we should do it tonight or next meeting. But I think nobody's mentioned this yet, but we also need to respect the residents of the neighborhood where this is taking place. And I said that a couple of years ago over there in Ward 2, where Mr. Ingberg's issue was, or a year ago, whenever that was. Those people didn't vote for me, but I think we should respect it. All of us should at least consider their position. We also need to respect whether this is contributing to or taking away from the small town feel that we all say that we support here. And we like to say this place that we all live feels like home. It's sometimes harder and harder to feel that way with all this growth, but we have all committed to try to do that. And this road, a road through this place, which used to be Ward 3, which were my voters, it's now Ward 2. Nonetheless, it doesn't matter to me which ward it's in. I don't support a road through there, at least at this point. Nobody's shown a real need for that yet. And so I agree with a lot of you that have already spoken to that. I guess that's all I have. Thank you. Oh, I had one other thing. I think in terms of safety of the children walking to and from school, and trust me, I live in this area. I see it. I see the kids walking to school every day. And a lot of them are walking to school. They're not all of them, but a lot of them are walking and riding their bikes to school every day. If we have a path through this new development, a footpath that they can ride their bikes or walk on straight to a pedestrian bridge, these kids of ours don't have to walk along that sidewalk along 90th Street, which is right next to the road, and does kind of scare a grown-up when he looks at the situation. That sidewalk is awfully close to that road that doesn't have any shoulder. And these kids are walking on that sidewalk every day on their way to Trumbull Park School. So this would help alleviate that safety concern that I think a lot of us have had over the years. So I fully support a pedestrian bridge. Again, whether it's tonight or next meeting, I don't think is all that important to me, but thank you.
Thank you. Just a couple of points. Councilman Mumgard, you and I did talk about this before, and I had told you it was going to be at the first meeting in May, that it would be coming forward. The way it was explained to me was I could only bring this forward if this contract had been open for another discussion. So there was no way for me to put it on the agenda other than to do it as an amendment, was the understanding that I had.
I would disagree with that. Staff makes the decision.
Yeah, it was what I was advised, so I am not trying to do anything in secret behind anyone at all. So hopefully we can get over that. There is parking on Rawhide, as the developer has already developed it, so there is parking as the concerns that you somewhat mentioned. So that is already being accommodated so that we could have parents stay on the south side of the creek as opposed to having to drive around. So hopefully that alleviates some of your concerns as you discussed them earlier. And with that, I would have no objections to the motion to delay that you previously spoke about.
Mr. Glover.
So, I have a little bit of a problem with that. First of all, because I have a commitment the next meeting and won't be here, so I won't have a chance to vote on this. Second of all, other than Mr. Mumgard maybe getting his feelings hurt because he thinks the proper procedure wasn't done, what difference will it make if we vote on this thing tonight? If I hear at least two other people talk about how they support this idea and would probably vote for it if it could get tweaked a little bit. How about we vote on it, pass it, and then tweak it? I mean, what's the difference? It's not going to make any difference if we spend a week and then come back because there's a thing or two that might be tweaked that means the same thing, and then we vote for it again.
I do want to make a note on that, and it's a little bit of a sanity check with staff to make sure procedurally we're doing things right. So if the motion to amend is approved and then the subsequent motion's approved, the applicant still hasn't agreed to it. We've amended the agreement. They still need to review and sign the contract. So a little bit to the point, if the developer has a concern, I think there's still a sanity check in that process. So I think that's one thing. Just the fact that we approve it tonight does not mean it's been approved by the applicant, because it is a contract and they still need to review it. So a little bit of a sanity check there.
Can I respond to that?
Yes.
Here and wants us to amend an agreement, the same goes both ways, right? Always.
Correct.
So that's all.
Yep. Mr. Fanslow.
So, yeah, I have a few comments. A lot of good conversation, in my opinion, a lot of good conversation about the safety of the kids in the school. I get that. And that obviously has to be part of in my opinion, has to be part of the conversation, which we've already had, and we've already made a decision on the street. But when I look at it, and I talked to Councilman Klug as well a few times about this issue, I see a half a mile between 84th and 90th without connecting those two neighborhoods. And maybe that made sense whenever that neighborhood was developed, but I trust the staff to use their professional opinions to look forward enough to think that those two neighborhoods should be connected. And I don't think it's, I get the safety of the kids, I've already said that, but it's not the only people and citizens who will be using that street. It'll be the people who live north of there wanting to go to that development without having to get onto 90th Street, without having to go to 84th Street to circle back to get to the new Tower District. Likewise, it'll be the new neighbors who will live in the Tower District will no doubt form relationships with the kids. The kids will form relationships in the school, and they'll want to go back and forth too, which means it's just not school traffic that street, that extension might carry. It's going to be yes, the school traffic, but it's going to be those relationships that are formed at that school, and it's going to be the neighbors to the north. My opinion, will use, if that connection's put in, we'll use that connection to use the goods and services that will be part of the Tower District. So I don't know what we're going to do today, if we're going to vote or not, but that's my opinion right now.
Thank you, Mr. Sunday.
I just have to point out, this sparked a point I wanted to respond to. I don't know if a lot of you may not be familiar with the situation with Harrison Street as it is now, north of the school. But there are probably more than any other street I've noticed in the city of Papillion, there are more cars that park on the street along Harrison Street than any other I've seen in Papillion. And if we were to increase that traffic even more, you know, that creates an additional safety hazard for all the kids in that neighborhood, in that Harrison Street neighborhood. That's the only point I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Klug.
I guess I just would like to simply ask, one of the main concerns that I heard Councilman Mumgard address in this entire resolution, or amendment, excuse me, was the idea of the pedestrian bridge waiting for 2 years after building. If we modified that to say to start immediately, would that alleviate enough of your concerns to proceed to vote as Councilman Glover has requested us to do tonight?
That would be my major thing. So yes, if we were to come up with this amendment and do it immediately, that's better than waiting these 2+ years. I would also want more specificity on the parking lot. You know, how much we're going to do, what lots we're going to use, etc. I mean, that's an advantage, something positive for the park too, right there. You know, Mr. Sunday's idea about a bike path of somehow connecting this overpass on the south side over to 90th Street, I think that's worth looking into too. And that, how could we do that? You know, with Mr. Glover's suggestion, I simply would say, yeah, getting it done's good, but let's get it done in the best way we can. And so that's where I'm still going to sit with saying, going along with that, I would accept that, I would thank you, but we can do that at the next meeting.
Before we make any more motions to amend, just because I want to keep the conversation somewhat tied together, one, I'm going to ask Mr. Kleffner to maybe respond to any impacts on removing that 2-year trigger. I'll ask you about that, just in case there's anything we're not thinking about. And then I might ask Mr. Sturzma or Mr. Gibbons to respond to the parking on Rawhide, because there is parking today already designed on Rawhide, so maybe they can address that a little bit on the parking. Yeah. And then the question about the trail, there is already a trail through there, so maybe have them just mention that as well. Let's start with Mr. Sturzma on the trail, Mr. Gibbons on the road, and then we'll jump to the 2-year trigger. Mr. Sturzma.
Yeah, on the site plan that was adopted as part of the mixed-use development agreement, there is a trail that extends along the south side of the creek west of Harrison Street, and then it extends south through the middle of the development. So there is a trail. That trail does not currently cross the creek. That's what's being proposed in lieu of Harrison Street.
Mr. Gibbons, Rawhide and parking?
Yes, as part of the mixed-use development agreement for that section between on Rawhide Road on north and south sides, there's on-street parking, parallel parking proposed on both sides of the street between Rawhide and South Harrison Street along the park there, in the north area too.
Okay. And Mr. Kleffner, anything in regards to that 2-year trigger that the council would be important for the council, pro or con?
As many of you are aware, we have the Valley Channel renovation that we're doing. We're in the process of doing the right-of-way at this point. As part of that project, we have to mitigate the wetlands next to the school that are already established. So we have a core permit for that. The minimum, it's a minimum of 2 years before we'll be able to do that. So we're still a year out from, we're still requiring right away. It'll be next year before we get to construction or renovation of the channel. And then after that, we'll have to establish the wetlands. And then typically it's a minimum of 2 years after you establish the wetlands that the Corps will release the permit, that then we can start the process of doing the pedestrian bridge. So we're a minimum of 2 to 3 years out before we can start any process on the pedestrian bridge.
But if there is a trigger to change, because I think right now the trigger is 2 years after a building permit, if it's the trigger becomes the release of the core permit, that might be a little more logical if they're concerned about timing.
Yes.
Okay. I think that, I just wanted to bring those clarifications out in the sequence of conversations. Mr. Stubbe.
Yeah, I just got a couple questions. One would be with regard to the amendment. Just my brief read of this is that I don't see that there's any obligation by the developer relative to the cost if a pedestrian bridge is constructed. Is that correct?
It's our cost.
It is 100% the city's cost. And so obviously, that amendment to that agreement is not necessarily puts the developer with any obligations at all, other than, I think, that section B, where if the city does decide to put in South Harrison Street, what obligation is there of the developer at that particular time?
And if I understand the process from a source and use, that'd be on the future, so it wouldn't be specifically in the source and use because it'd be a futures obligation.
Okay. The other question I have with regard to is that, you know, we put together a budget, we put together a capital improvement program. There's nothing within the capital improvement program relative to any type of a pedestrian bridge at this particular location. So what process will we have to go through in order to be able to, because there's no funding for it other than there's funding, I think, for preliminary evaluation of the South Harrison Street, correct?
I'll look to staff for a clarification, but the original, well, not the original agreement, the agreement that's in place now has the funding obligation for South Harrison. So I believe the intent, if I'm reading things right, the passage of this amendment basically just switches the intent from South Harrison to the bridge. So in my mind, at least, knowing the intent, I think that funding would carry over. But I would look to staff to see if we have to do anything additional formally to recognize that in the budget or any other requirements. Mr. Sturzman, Mr. Gibbons, or Mr. Kleffner, any comment on that item?
Currently, we have the $750,000 for the Harrison Street connection budgeted already within the budget. So we would, again, as the mayor said, we would move that over to the pedestrian bridge and use that. Plus, we would have to allocate additional funds in the future years. We wouldn't need to allocate that for, again, 2 to 3 years until we get to the point that we would need to begin construction of the bridge.
Thank you.
So there is $750,000 in this year's budget for that?
Yes, there is.
Thank you. Mr. Mumgard.
Well, I think council members have come up with some very good questions as to what we might want to adjust this amendment, this pedestrian bridge, to accommodate various things. I'm very disappointed in the delay that we've heard, but I understand what might cause that. So instead of doing it immediately, let's just use that as our timetable. I don't like using the timetable when somebody comes in from the outside and wants to build an apartment building.
There is nobody else in the queue, so if you've got a motion, it would be appropriate.
So Mr. Stubbe's ideas about the money, hey, if you're going to save the money by not building some research, gee, you could kick in too. Maybe that's something we could discuss. And I'm just saying, let's spend 2 weeks talking about that. Can I make my motion now? Okay, so I'll make a motion to lay over resolution R240070 until the next meeting. And I would specifically request that the agenda for the next meeting identify this amendment publicly so it's out there.
I do want to make a note that F18 and F19 are kind of tied together. So if there is a motion to table F18 and that's approved, that has a direct impact on 19, then probably being tabled as well. But I'll look to both of the applicant and staff if that's correct. Okay.
2 meetings from now so that Mr. Glover could participate in the vote.
I'll be gone next
You'll be
meeting,
gone
too.
the next one.
You'll be gone next time. Yeah, certainly I would love to accommodate other council members, and so I would modify my motion to be a layover for 2 meetings until the first meeting in June. And then have it publicized on the agenda. I mean, frankly, I'll just say, you know, if we're gonna have to wait to build anything and actually accomplish anything until they get the, you know, the ditch worked out, if we do it tonight, we do it, you know, in 4 weeks, it won't make any difference. So my motion is to lay it over until the first meeting in June.
I'm going to ask the applicant, just because I know there was a specific question to him on what's a 1 council meeting delay. Now there's a conversation of a 2. I want to give you an opportunity to...
The only question I have is, will that delay the start of South 90th? Because South 90th, if you close off South Harrison, South 90th becomes really important to get that street improved. So I don't know where the city's at on that.
I'm going to ask Mr. Kleffner.
I can't say yes or no.
Okay.
Right now, we're waiting on this so that we can get a right-of-way agent under contract to start negotiation for their acquisition of right-of-way on 90th. And then it would determine on how fast our acquisition on 90th goes, depending on how fast we are. Right now, like you said earlier, we're already a number of months behind, so anytime I can make up, I would gladly take it. But if we have to work around it, we'll work around it.
And we feel the same. I mean, South 90th needs to get going. It's not going to be an easy task. So.
Well, okay, you know, and I don't want to stand in the way of 90th Street. I also don't want to complicate things here, but certainly, if the amendment was withdrawn, we could go ahead and vote on the resolution, get this going, and then bring the amendment back in 4 weeks. And that really won't change your timeline, Council Member Klug.
Yeah, I'm not at all debating that, whether it would change the timeline or not, but I was specifically told and advised multiple times that I can't do that unless the developer has already opened up the contract. So I'm looking to city staff to see if maybe there's another advice that can be given, or how to do this.
I'm going to look to Mr. Sersma to answer that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's the advice that staff gave you. Because the last direction that the majority of the council gave us was to proceed with the street, we didn't feel it was appropriate for 1 council member to be a part of the negotiation or to introduce a change to an amendment. So that was our advice, that it would be a motion on the floor. In this case, you know, I'm getting the sense that the majority will of the council has changed. So it's a question of how do we get that formalized so that we can then negotiate with the applicant and make the changes that you want.
I think the way to formalize it and now move forward is maybe to withdraw the amendment, make a subsequent amendment that directs staff to work with the applicant on the South Harrison and connection, pedestrian connection. If that amendment passes, the majority of the council just gave an instruction, and I think that changes what you were said, but it does get the agreement approved tonight so everything can move forward, if that makes sense. Does that make sense what I said?
You're going to have to give me a second.
Oh, that's fine. There's been a lot of discussion. And let me just repeat it one more time. So what we have right now is we have the original agreement that came forward. It was then, there's an amendment on the floor now to change it. And that's what sparked all the discussion and the desire for a delay. If there is a delay, that impacts South 90th. So But from the discussion, it sounds like council's generally coming together on there is a solution. They're hearing you, and there is probably a solution. So if believing that intent, then if we withdraw the motion, I don't think you're at high risk, and we can vote on the original motion tonight, which allows South 90th to move forward tonight. But when you withdraw your motion, assuming you do, if you withdraw your motion, make a subsequent amendment directing staff as part of this agreement to negotiate with the developer on swapping South Harrison for the connection. The agreement gets approved tonight. With that intent voted upon, if a majority of the council then approves that amendment, that is the direction to staff to go visit and on that and negotiate on their very specific item, if that makes sense.
Okay, so, I'm sorry. So I will withdraw my amendment with a substitute amendment requesting staff to move forward with the language in this current pulled amendment to be discussed with the developer and with additional input to make it become the part of Harrison Street, so that we go from Harrison Street extension to being Harrison Street pedestrian crossing across the creek.
Who made the second on the motion to amend? Mr. Gaines? You okay with that?
We normally go into closed session, okay? And I think that that's where my brain is at right now. But I'm going to ask you, you know, because you've made your opinion as far as you don't care if the connection's there or not. Well, I can tell you personally that I care immensely about Harrison Street not going through. And so I would just ask you to make sure that if she withdraws her amendment, and I am okay with it with the second, that you guys in good faith negotiate with us so that we can come to some amicable solution so that we don't have issues in the future with when you guys come up with amendments. So I'll just say it publicly, but this is somewhat of leverage for us to give you what you want to get what we want. And if she withdraws her motion, we lose that leverage. So I'm just asking for your reassurance that we're going to put trust in you if this happens and pass this tonight, that you'll negotiate with good faith with the city so that we can work out a solution.
Yep. So we're probably a little over 4 years into this, and I hope, at least maybe not you, Mr. Gaines, but staff, our MO on this entire project has been pretty open book and pretty reasonable. So yes, I get what you're saying, and I think I would be lying to you if I said we're probably not going to be before you again for another amendment, just because lots and configurations changes. So yes, I mean, that is perfectly fine. We're not going to go bait and switch and say, Yahtzee, gotcha, you know. thanks
And
for what we want.
I didn't suspect you would, and I'm not making an accusation that you would.
I get it.
But when you assume, or when I assume, then you know what happens. And so I just wanted to, on the record, just have you just state that this is what my intent is, and I do assume you guys will negotiate in good faith, but I just
Absolutely.
wanted to get it public. So.
Our course of dealings have been that, you know, if something comes back and it's, well, the SID or the developer's paying 100% of it, I mean, that obviously is not what we're doing, but everything that we have done thus far is in good faith, so I don't suspect this will be any different.
So you did request it to be withdrawn. The person that made the second agreed to that, so I'll take that it has been, that the motion to amend has been removed. Now the subsequent then motion to amend is the direction to staff to work with the developer on this specific item. Is there a second to that? Second by Mr. Sunday. Any other discussion? Yes. Got to get the voting system caught up.
Mayor, I have a quick question.
Yes.
I don't want to confuse all this, but we initially talked about at some point having the ability to go back and and the council go back and say, vote on whether or not we would extend that portion at some point. Is that still on the table, or is that gone forever, or how's?
I think what's on the table is, if this motion to amend is approved, what's on the table is for staff to work with the developer, and based on all of this discussion and the original amendment that was in front of us, to come up with an agreeable amendment to the agreement on this item.
Which could mean that we would look at it in 3 years, or?
The way the original amendment was written was when it's warranted, which is why then it was a futures obligation.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. So we have, yes.
I'm in the queue.
You're in. It's Bob.
I just got a couple questions with regard to South 90th Street. So I think everybody in this room, the council members and the developer, all supports 90th Street improvements. And I understand there's some concerns with regard to delays in approving F-19. The question I have is that, you know, because of South 90th Street being something that we all support, what risk is the city taking on if that F-19 isn't approved tonight and has to wait for a week? Can we continue to move forward with regard to what is kind of been established relative to the city's role and the developer's role relative to South 19th Street, irregardless of Harrison Street?
Well, if we proceed the way we're going, the motion to amend has been withdrawn. Then there is a pending motion that just directs staff to work with the developer specifically to the Harrison conversation. And then if that is approved, now the motion is amended, F-18 then gets voted on and passed, F-19 gets voted on and passed, South 90th moves forward, as was originally intended when the agenda was published.
So if F-18 doesn't get passed, can F-19 pass?
We wouldn't do that because 19 assumes an amended agreement. Correct.
So my point is that would the city consider taking on whatever risk is associated with moving forward with our efforts, the city efforts, relative to 90th Street, so we do not delay whatever efforts we are proposing relative to 90th Street?
I'd ask Mr. Kleffner to answer that. That's correct. Mr. Beller.
Procedurally, we're the lead currently, and so we're punting everything to the city.
The
So for
amendment
them to get
shifts it
started,
to where we're the lead.
If we move forward with our efforts, recognizing that I think everybody in here is supporting
There's a risk,
90th
yeah.
Street, what risk is the city taking by not having 19 approved tonight and waiting 4 weeks? Because obviously we don't want to wait with the delays associated.
I think we'd be moving ahead with a project that we're not the lead on.
Yeah, but what efforts are we doing?
Oh, Mr.
That's my
Kleffner
point.
or
Is
Mr.
it
Sturzma.
in-kind service? So is it city staff's work? Or is it you going advertising for right-of-way services? Is it advertising for design? What effort is being proposed?
It's advertising for right-of-way services to get somebody under contract to start that. So basically, I would be initiating that process without being the lead on it, without having that part of our budget or things along those lines.
You wouldn't be spending any dollars?
Technically, no, sir.
And if we're not the lead, would we even have the authority to do it? Would probably be my question.
Technically, no. As not the lead, no, we would not. Technically, the right-of-way is not ours to negotiate for at that point. So it's kind of, we're splitting hairs, and I'll leave it at that.
So I'm going to try to get back to where I think we are, and there's a couple in the queue. But we do have a motion to amend, which is the direction of the staff to work specifically with the developer on the Harrison, on the proposed amendment and the discussion we had tonight. So that motion, I believe, is on the floor. And there was a second on that, I believe, by Mr. Sunday. Any other discussion specifically to the motion to amend that directs staff to work with the developer on Harrison and the pedestrian bridge? Mr. Fanslow.
I just want to clarify. So the motion to have staff work with the developer on Harrison Street, is that pedestrian only or future street connection? What is that? Somebody tell me what that means.
What I believe the
Please.
intent is to take the amendment that Ms. Klug had presented and all of the discussion that is part of the record tonight and bring that together in a logical conversation and based on what the staff believes and the applicant believes to bring an amendment forward. Specific on that item. Which I would then say, and this is just me hearing the council discussion, would be to delay the Harrison Street connection to a futures when it's determined by council, to put the pedestrian connection in at the point that the core permit expires. And I think that'd be the two primary items that I've heard from the discussion, because a trail's already in the design and on-street parking on Rawhide is already in the design. Would that intent of what I summarized kind of fit with, Ms. Klug, what you were thinking? Mm-hmm. Okay. So I think that's the motion and the second. Any other discussion, Ms. Klug?
Just for clarification, I know we said go into negotiations, but I would hope that we could keep this at the same 4 weeks that we were talking about previously, so that it's a done deal, so that city, developer, and citizens know exactly what's going on.
I think that's reasonable.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Please vote on the motion to amend, and a yes vote is the direction to the staff to work with the developer on the Harrison pedestrian.
Six yeas, 2 nays by Fanslaw and Stube.
Motion passes, so the motion is amended. Any other discussion on the motion as amended? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. F19, Resolution R240071, a resolution to approve the Highway 370 mixed-use development amended and restated interlocal cooperation agreement for South 90th improvements. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R240071? Motion by Councilman Gaines, second by Mr. Sunday. Any proponents or opponents? Council discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. F20, resolution to approve the third amendment to the Belterra subdivision agreement. Motion to approve resolution R240073. Motion by Councilman Gaines. Second by Mr. Glover. Any proponents or opponents? Welcome.
I might as well come up here.
You ready for discussion?
Caleb Beasley, 10909 Mill Valley Road, engineer for the Belterra project. I'm just here if you have any questions on this amendment.
Thank you very much. Any other proponents or opponents? Council discussion? Please vote.
Eight yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. F21, resolution R240080. A resolution to approve the Sarpy County and Cities wastewater agencies revised sewer rates and connection fee schedule for the Unified South Sarpy wastewater system. Is there a motion to approve resolution R240080? Motion by Councilman Stube, second by Councilman Klug. Any proponents or opponents? Council discussion? Please vote.
Eight yeas, 0 nays.
Committees have met. Any comments from the floor? Council comments? Last couple of weeks we just, oh, I'm sorry, welcome. Nope, that's fine.
Just real quick.
State your name and address for the record.
Lorene Renante, 1108 Park Drive, Papillion. It is campaign season. Next Tuesday is the election. As a campaign manager and heavily involved in other campaigns, just a reminder, keep your signs out of the proper right-of-way areas so that code enforcement doesn't have to go and remove them. They're expensive both for code enforcement to pick them up and for campaigns. So just a kind of a public service comment. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Ditto that for the roofing companies and the people that will buy houses cheap.
And hail repair. It is a good point. Code enforcement, I think Mr. Sturzman told me they picked up over 200 signs last week. A lot of it is related to storm, but some of it is the season we're in. So do appreciate that comment. Last couple of weeks has been chamber ribbon cuttings. Mentioned some of the United Cities and the things that Ms. Powers had mentioned. Just as a reminder, though, it's not too early if you're thinking of legislative items. It's not too early to bring those forward. This was the end of the biennium, so everything that was introduced is done, and they'll start the next 2-year cycle fresh. And so if you've got any items, January begins a long session, and that would be the time to introduce. So if there's anything we need to be working on that you're not aware of, let me know. And then just from a staff perspective, maybe ask Mr. Kleffner, the one resident who in the public hearing on Shadow Creek was concerned with 90th Street timing and the 84 signal and warrants and safety. I think we mentioned from an education perspective we might reach back out and just see if all of her questions were answered. So I appreciate that. Somebody on Mr. Sturzman's staff. Perfect. Yeah, we've got it. Perfect. Thank you very much for doing that. Any other council comments? Motion to adjourn? Motion by Councilman Gaines. Second by Councilman Fanslow. Please vote. Mr. Glover. Mr. Glover. He didn't want to go home.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
We are adjourned.